Hello, what's your relationship with your parents like? Especially if you're a little bit older, and especially if you're from a marginalized community, your experiences with your parents may be one filled with loud yells, chanclas, and disapproval. And even though there's all these online and offline cultural movements trying to bring attention to the horrors of this parenting, it's still so traditional, so tethered to our understanding of family life that it seems very difficult to get rid of.
And it's not your responsibility to clean your room, that you have to clean your room. How many chances am I going to give you? Every time I give you a chance, you go back and do the same thing. You know what? Give me this. Computers. Okay. There we go. Keep that. And this is your phone. This is your phone. And I'm not. You know what? Fuck it. Here you go. This is your computer.
Now, I understand this is a very sensitive subject matter for a lot of people, especially coming from me, with my baby face and my fragile demeanor. Maybe if I yelled at you more and broke your stuff, you would think of me as more authoritative. A little joke there, just a little joke. But jokes aside, if we're going to talk about mental health on this channel, we're going to have to talk about family life, and we're going to have to talk about our experiences with parenting. We talked about intergenerational trauma in December and the struggles that young people have with that, and the parenting aspect is very much a part of it. Because sometimes parents deal with their difficult situations by taking it out on their kids. And these difficult situations and their traumas are shaped by social conditions. Recently, we talked to Noah Samson about mental conditions and how much of our understanding of getting better and being good even is based off of being a social construct, being good to other people, waiting for other people to perceive us as good. Which is always a great idea because other people always have the best intentions and ideas, and we should always care what they have to say. The point is, inevitably, we're going to have to talk about all these things to talk about parenting, and we're going to have to talk about parenting to talk about mental health. In this video, we're going to talk about the authoritarian parenting style and how we as a society put this style on this type of pedestal despite knowing how harmful it can be. And to do that, we're going to have to talk about some of the historic conditions that made it this way in the first place. So all of that is coming up after the ad break. So TikTok has brought a lot of attention to this supposedly new style of parenting, which is being called gentle parenting. But that's more of a vague, trendy term that describes a lot of different parenting styles rather than one specific one. As Jessica Winter writes in The New Yorker, gentle parenting is a catch-all for variations that include respectful parenting, mindful parenting, and intentional parenting. In its broadest outlines, gentle parenting centers on acknowledging a child's feelings and the motivation behind challenging behavior, as opposed to correcting the behavior itself. Now, oftentimes, gentle parenting is seen as a marker of privilege that privileged parents do, and it's usually confused with something that gentle parenting defenders call more so permissive parenting. This idea that you let your kid do whatever they want, and if they throw things in your face, you don't act up, you just say thank you or whatever.
You don't believe in rules, yet you want to control Ned's anger.
Yeah, you've got to help us, Doc. We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
What advocates in this movement say is that gentle parenting does involve setting boundaries. It's not just letting your kid do whatever the hell they want, but guiding them to do the right things in a different way.
Well, dinner's in just a few minutes. Mama's cooking right now. Can you wait 30 minutes? No. Oi, howling hooligan, why are you mad? You're hungry? That makes sense. It's almost dinner time. I'm cooking it right now. No, I'm not going to give you a snack because it's almost dinner time. I'm cooking it right now. We do not negotiate with terrorists. This is not optional. You get to be mad. You don't get to take it out on me. So you can either take a sip of mom's water and watch me cook, or you can go hang out with a book in your room until it's dinner time, which is not very long from now. Those are your options. You get to pick. You want to watch me cook? Cool.
Now, this rise of popularity of this phenomenon of gentle parenting is something that comes as a response culturally to the traditional ideas of parenting they have, namely authoritarian parenting and the way that that's so naturally what we assume to be part of the parenting experience. But it's also something which we realize has to change. Trademarks of authoritarian parenting include yelling at your kids, taking their stuff, invading their privacy, etc. And a big part of that is a failure to communicate properly. Buddhist monk, teacher, and writer Thich Nhat Hanh warned against what he called toxic speech. And in the parenting world, that's what we would consider reprimanding and punishing children, saying negative things about their personality and their character, which does more harm than good. Now, this is something I'm learning about from his book, The Art of Communicating, but I don't own the book yet, and I haven't had time to really dig into his bibliography the way I'd like to. That's where today's sponsor, Blinkist, came in. Blinkist is a service that gives you access to thousands of nonfiction podcasts and book insights, including ones by Thich, Nhat, Hanh, as well as philosophers like David Hume and Alain Badiou. Through one blink, I learned that Badiou believes that true love is able to break us out of our lonely little pleasure-seeking bubbles and help connect us to something greater, which is an idea he expounds upon in his book In Praise of Love. That sounds like it's going to have to be on the book list as well. Now, with the new feature Blinkist Connect, any premium plan can be shared with 2 different accounts at no additional cost to either account. That's 2 for the price of 1. Through this video, you can get 25% off of Blinkist Premium and get in on that sweet 2-for-1 deal. Start your 7-day free trial by clicking the link in the description. Now, I know some of you are looking to get into more healthy ways of being, trying to see new versions of yourself this year, and I think Blinkist can maybe help you with that. Maybe some of you are trying to be better parents, better communicators with your children. Blinkist can maybe help you do that. Become who you want to be in 2023. I'd like to be someone a little bit more knowledgeable in philosophy. How about you? Get started today with Blinkist. Give it a try. With that said, thanks to Blinkist, and let's get back to our program.
What happened to the stairs? My parents took them down because I am grounded.
That's disturbing.
So these ideas of corporal punishment, other heavy types of punishment, restrictive lifestyles for your children are examples of authoritarian parenting. This is a term coined by famed psychologist Dr. Diana Baumrind as part of her famed explorations of different parenting styles from the 60s onward. She wrote that punitive, hostile, disaffiliated, self-righteous, and non-empathic disciplinary practices are associated clearly in the studies reviewed with cognitive and emotional disturbance in the child, including hostile withdrawal, hostile acting out, dependency, personality problems, nervousness, and reduced schoolroom efficiency. However, Baumrind was clear that punishment to some degree and other types of restrictions are not necessarily terrible. Authoritative parenting is something that stands in contrast to authoritarian parenting and is a predecessor of gentle parenting in that it involves some level of punitive measure but is much more respectful of the child. Winter writes that it privileges emotional attunement but allows for positive and negative reinforcement. Authoritative parents may use timeouts and groundings, for example, which are discouraged by their gentle counterparts. The word authoritarian, in contrast, is very important here. Don't be a dictator with your kids. If you wouldn't want the ruler of your city to govern you a certain way, don't do that to your children. A lot of what this comes down to is more and more recognition that the parenting process has to be humanizing. Child development professional Robin Einzig is quoted by Winter when talking about the use of the word we in repetition by authoritarian parenting styles like we don't hit people or we don't do this and that, as saying, children notice that we don't speak this way to adults. I mean, can you imagine talking to your best friend about something that they did and when they disappoint you, screaming in their face and being like, we don't do that to people? Why should that work for our kids? I think that this phrasing and this image really gets at the heart of the issue. Why do we treat kids in a way that not only we would never want to be treated, but in a way that we would never treat other adults? Well, one of the key elements of the family parenting dynamic is the power dynamic. Where you may never raise your voice at your coworkers for fear of retribution or punishment, the same kind of fear is not present when it comes to your children. Who's going to punish you for that? Put simply, authoritarian parenting styles aim to treat children like they are beneath the parents. And doesn't that mean like treating the kids less than human? So this has to raise a lot of questions. For me, it's like, why do we treat kids in such a bizarre way in the first place? And what makes so many parents eager to relish in this one-sided power dynamic? To answer questions like these, we need to take a look at the history of parenting. Let's do that after the break. So I recently got the opportunity to talk to the wonderful people behind the podcast It's Not Just in Your Head, including the producer and host Liam, substance abuse counselor Ikoi Hiroe, and the famed psychologist and activist Dr. Harriet Fraud. As we were talking about education and the ways that education messes you up when you're a kid, Dr. Fraud brought up this point that inspired this video, actually.
Louis Althusser, his theory of ideological state apparatuses, which are the family, the authoritarian family, authoritarian religion and authoritarian education work together to teach children the lines of dominance and submission and teach the kids that they are not important and they need to subordinate themselves. And so that you don't even need cops and the army because people put themselves down and keep submissive. Grow up amongst giants who have total control of your life. I think that's why 85% of child homicides are by their parents, because these people are utter dictators and you have to obey for your own survival.
This is an issue that Dr. Fraud has studied thoroughly. In an episode for her show, Capitalism Hits Home for Democracy at Work, she talks about the history of the family and its ties to patriarchy and different economic systems of control, including feudalism and its origins there, to the development of modern capitalism.
Because the family as we know it now, mommy, daddy, children, was not always the family. And it won't always be the way we personally relate to each other in our intimate lives. One of the big demands of the French Revolution was state support for children. Victor Hugo has that in Les Miserables. Children were on the barricades and demanded state support through their childhood. And the rich realized, if there's state support, who's going to be able to pay for it? There'll be taxes on us. That can't happen. And so they came up with the nuclear family idea, that the man would be the feudal lord of his own little household. The wife would be there because she would have protection through pregnancy, and in exchange she would work full-time on the care of the home, on production in the home, of the foodstuffs they ate, of cleanliness and childcare, and she would be protected that way underneath the feudal male. The children would be chattel, and one could sell their children or rent them out or whatever, they were chattel.
Dr. Fraud's analysis reveals the ties of authoritarian parenting to dominant religious ideas, themselves part, of course, of hegemonic systems of control, and the systems of production and power behind them, which leads to the modern-day family having an inherently damaging effect on women and children. And we see this in Dr. Diana Baumann's analysis as well, wherein she notes that authoritarian parenting styles derive from a desire to execute the divine will of God. Look, it's easy to conceptualize that you have to parent your child aggressively and strictly when you believe that children are born with original sin and are essentially untrained beasts, and that if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. Spoil the child, like milk. But beneath beliefs like this are material realities. An authoritarian male head of household takes this role as a way to have some sort of power within societies wherein he is surveilled, stratified, and made to do the bidding of people who have more power than him. As Jacques Donzelot writes in his seminal work, The Policing of Families, in compensation for his responsibility toward the authorities that bound him, the head of the family had virtually a discretionary power over those around him. He could make use of them for all the operations that were intended to further his état. He could determine all the children's careers, decide how the family members would be employed, and which alliances would be contracted. He could also punish them if they did not live up to their obligations toward the family, and for this he could get the support of the public authority that owed him aid and protection in his endeavor. This book analyzes how within Europe, within France, these parenting strategies and these familial styles derive directly from government influence, particularly from people in power, allowing the authoritarian male to have his level of authority within a specific plot, like a feudal lord. So when you say authoritarian and compare it to a dictator of a country, the comparison's not that far off. And if you think about it, this is what gives rise to our social norm that a true man has a wife and kids and has to take care of them and lead them with a strong hand. So of course, conveniently, the religious structures that those same people in power utilize to help control people are the ones that are advocating for this being a godly thing. And this is not me being anti-religion. This is about the power dynamics within religious organizations, of course. After all, spiritual beliefs help your brain move beyond doubts. With all that said, changing our parenting styles is a key part of changing how we see the world and how the world sees us. And it has to be part of that process. As long as we're staking our spiritual and economic status, our justification for being, on the status of how we raise our kids and how we deal with our spouse, we're always going to struggle to offer children an upbringing free of dehumanization, because the structure comes from dehumanizing children. So we'll conclude by talking about some ways forward after the break. Thanks for watching the ads. They help the channel a lot. The authoritarian family is a modern-day fetish. Just like the conventions of masculinity and superiority that our family structure is attached to and that are a key part of that family structure in the first place, we are seeing so many people online proudly clinging to these ideologies, lamenting a world in which these simple traditions are being changed. Oh, why can't I just yell at my kids and call them losers anymore? This ruins my state of being as a man. But in order for it to truly change, our conditions have to change. It's not just going to be TikToks and good advice that's going to help our kids. Helping our kids has to involve helping us. We need policy that guarantees people their human rights, not just through nice statements, but through actual resources that are disseminated to people so they have their health intact and education and safety and etc. etc. We have to start looking at our world collectively with care and caring for people within collectives in order to start seeing these changes from the family outward. As long as parents are pressured to exert this power and to enact this power to reify their own status as human beings, good ideas are just not going to be enough. So while I hope this video is interesting and educational in some way, you should also think about being a better person in many more ways than just talking about gentle parenting. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hit like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Leave a comment if you have something to say. And thanks again to today's sponsor, Blinkist. Remember, you can get 25% off a premium plan with the link in the description. Have fun. See ya.